A watchman, standing on the roof of the palace in the Greek city of Argos, laments that he has spent so much time on this post that he knows the night sky perfectly. He waits for a signal, a beacon that will announce the fall of Troy, which has been under siege for a decade by a Greek army commanded by Agamemnon, the king of Argos. In Agamemnon's absence, his wife, Clytemnestra, rules the city, and though the watchman remarks that she has male strength of heart, he is still anxious without the king. "I sing," he says, "only to weep again at the pity of this house no longer, as once, administered in the grand way." At last, the beacon flares, announcing Troy's fall. The watchman leaps up, shouting with joy, and hurries inside to inform the queen. Then the chorus, composed of Argos' oldest and wisest men, enters and recounts the history of the Trojan War. They explain how Agamemnon and his brother Menelaus, king of Sparta, assembled a vast fleet and army to reclaim Helen, Menelaus' wife, who had been taken by Paris, a Trojan prince. The chorus reflects on how the Greeks and Trojans have spent a decade exhausting themselves in battle, while the elderly men of Argos, too old to fight, gradually weaken with age. Clytemnestra arrives, and the chorus asks why she has commanded sacrifices to all the gods and celebrations across the city. Before she can answer, they recall the grim story of how the Greek fleet was stalled at Aulis by unfavorable winds, and how Agamemnon discovered that the goddess Artemis had sent them. To appease her and allow the fleet to sail to Troy, Agamemnon was compelled to sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. The chorus vividly recounts her desperate cries for mercy as her father's men carried out the fatal act. In Agamemnon, the minor characters carry a strength that sets the play apart from many of Aeschylus' other works. The watchman, whose voice opens the drama, is especially remarkable. His complaints about the monotony of his duty, his anxieties over the state of the city, and his unmistakable, heartfelt joy at the news of his king's victory make him a deeply human and believable figure. His mix of eager anticipation and underlying dread shapes the play's atmosphere. The return of the king is a cause for celebration, yet a shadow of fear hangs over Argos, hinting at the terrible events yet to come. The events of the play form only a fragment of a much larger story, as the chorus explains in its long speech. Two women who never appear on stage nonetheless have profound influence over what unfolds in Argos: Helen, the wife of Menelaus, and Iphigenia. Helen's flight with Paris sparks the entire Trojan conflict and its consequences, and the chorus repeatedly reflects on the immense suffering caused for one woman's promiscuous sake. Meanwhile, the sacrifice of Iphigenia casts a dark shadow over the marriage of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon, ultimately setting the stage for his grim fate. The account of Iphigenia's death challenges the audience's sympathy for Agamemnon. The act itself seems disproportionate. Although Artemis demanded her life for the fleet to sail to Troy, was it truly necessary for Agamemnon to kill his own daughter to recover a single woman? Aeschylus portrays Iphigenia's innocence and helplessness in a profoundly moving way. Her desperate pleas, her cries of "Father," are ignored, and even her silent, sorrowful gestures pierce those who carry out the sacrifice. This vivid depiction of violated innocence gives the audience a clear reason to understand, and even anticipate, Clytemnestra's hatred for her husband long before she speaks. After the chorus finishes recounting the story of Iphigenia, they again ask Clytemnestra to explain the sacrifices she has ordered. She informs them that Troy has fallen to the Greeks. The chorus wonders if she has dreamed this or merely heard a rumor, but the queen dismisses such notions with contempt. She insists she is not foolish enough to rely on dreams or gossip, and she describes how a network of beacons, stretching across the Greek islands, has carried the news from Troy to Argos. She imagines the slaughter within the walls of the city and hopes that the Greeks will commit no offenses against the gods that might prevent their safe return. The chorus offers thanks to Zeus for the victory and declares that Troy's destruction was deserved, a punishment for Paris' crime in taking Helen. Yet they also consider the terrible cost of the war. The god of war, they say, has weighed the fate of men in his spear, and from the fires at Troy have risen ashes, bitter and heavy with the tears of those lost. Even as victory comes, all is not well at home. The losses endured in battle have made the citizens of Argos uneasy, and the chorus fears that the warriors who triumphed abroad may still face divine punishment. They reflect that perhaps humility is wiser, for the gods do not overlook those who have slain many, and often punish mortals who rise too high. The chorus debates whether to trust the news carried by the beacons. Some fear the gods may have sent a false message, while others suggest Clytemnestra is celebrating prematurely. Then a herald arrives from the shore, and the chorus agrees that his report will reveal the true events in Troy. Aeschylus portrays Clytemnestra as self-assured. Though the chorus consists of the most respected men of Argos, she shows them no deference. When they question the news, she defends her judgment and provides a detailed account of the beacon system that conveyed the good tidings in less than a day. Critics have noted, however, that the geography of the beacons presents problems. For example, the second beacon, lit on Mount Athos, could not have been seen across the 100 leagues of sea separating it from the next signal. This issue of the beacons ties into a larger question of time in the play. Troy fell only the night before, yet Agamemnon arrives in Argos the following day, an impossibility given the distance and the storm said to have struck the fleet. Aeschylus compresses events that took months into a single day to achieve dramatic unity, a technique familiar from later playwrights, but the key events of the play are meant to occur within this single day. Some critics offer another explanation for the beacon detail. Clytemnestra and Aegisthus may have received advance word of Troy's fall, but withheld it from the people of Argos until the day before Agamemnon's return. In this reading, there is only one beacon, not a chain across the Aegean, and Aegisthus lights it to deceive the citizens. This resolves part of the timeline problem, but raises the question of why the chorus does not wonder at the king's rapid return. Following further reflection on Helen's guilt, the chorus turns to a recurring theme, the danger of hubris. Hubris, they explain, is mortal pride that seeks to exceed the bounds set by the gods, and it must be punished. When they say that the vaunt of high glory is bitterness, for God's thunderbolts, they signal that excessive success inevitably leads to downfall, foreshadowing Agamemnon's fate. The herald expresses his relief at returning to Argos after a decade abroad, admitting that he never dared to hope he would see his home again. He greets the chorus and hails the guards and monuments of his city, announcing that Agamemnon is returning in triumph after defeating Troy and avenging Paris' crime. The chorus urges him to rejoice and notes that the city has grown fearful in the absence of its young warriors. The herald insists that, however much the city has suffered, the warriors endured far greater hardships. He recounts the trials of the siege of Troy, the cramped ships that carried them, the violent weather, and the deaths of countless men. Yet they have triumphed, and their deeds will be celebrated forever. Both the army and the city are blessed eternally. Clytemnestra steps forward, noting that she heard the news first and ordered sacrifices despite the doubts of the old men. She commands the herald to return to Agamemnon and tell him to come home quickly, for she, faithful all these years, longs for his strong presence in their house. The herald observes that her words sound noble and fitting for the wife of the king. Before departing, the chorus asks about Menelaus, Agamemnon's brother, and the herald responds with displeasure. It is not right, he says, to stain the blessing of this day with such talk. He recounts how the Greek fleet was battered by a violent storm as it departed Troy, sinking many ships. Somehow Agamemnon's vessel survived, but Menelaus disappeared. He may have survived, perhaps even safe somewhere, believing Agamemnon to be lost, but at this moment his fate remains uncertain. The herald is one of Aeschylus' carefully drawn minor characters. While his role is primarily to bring news of Agamemnon's imminent arrival, his passionate joy at returning home and his vivid recounting of the horrors of war make him sympathetic. He describes the armies suffering outside Troy with power and intensity, the exhausting labor, the nights exposed to the elements, the cramped quarters on the ships, and the countless slain. His words challenge the idea of wartime glory and heroism, yet he quickly sets the horrors aside to embrace the triumph of victory. He bids farewell to all their unhappiness, for the pleasure of surviving outweighs the pain. This celebration of homecoming carries a bitter irony in light of the tragedy to come. Even as he rejoices at Troy's conquest, the herald must recall the storm that destroyed much of the Greek fleet. The chorus' earlier warnings about the dangers of hubris frame this account, the possible death of Menelaus, and the threat that the gods' vengeance may yet fall on Agamemnon, suggests that divine retribution awaits the Greek heroes. Their victory over Troy, however complete, remains fragile, subject to the whims of the gods. After delivering the grim news about Menelaus, the herald departs. The chorus turns again to Helen, reflecting on the aptness of her name, which means death, for the destruction and suffering she has caused. Greece lost countless lives in trying to reclaim her, and Troy was destroyed in the effort to retain her. They consider the idea that virtuous families often suffer for their goodness, but conclude that the opposite is true. Only evil deeds generate further wrongdoing, while households upright in their conduct are blessed with beautiful children. Human pride, they say, leads to suffering and death, not righteousness. Agamemnon now arrives, riding in a chariot with Cassandra at his side. The chorus hails him and admits having doubted his wisdom in waging war on Troy. Now seeing his triumph, they offer their praise. Agamemnon thanks the gods for their role in his victory, and assures the chorus that he hears their counsel, acknowledging that the most loyal servant may serve faithfully even while disagreeing with his ruler. He promises to attend to the affairs of the city and the gods by keeping honest leaders in power and ending corruption. Clytemnestra steps forward to greet the king, expressing her passionate love and recounting the sufferings of a wife who waits anxiously while her husband fights in distant lands. Each day brought new rumors of his death or injury. Had Agamemnon taken all the wounds reported to her, he would have been pierced like a fishing net. Fearing unrest at home, she had sent their son Orestes away to stay with friends in another city. Now her solitude is over, and she rejoices at his homecoming. She has prepared a bright purple carpet for Agamemnon, so that his feet need not touch the ground as he enters the palace. To understand the events of Agamemnon, one must know the background of the Trojan War, the sacrifice of Iphigenia, and the ancestral curse on the house of Aeschylus. The terrible legacy of the family, which drives each generation to vengeful murder, is not fully revealed until Aegisthus recounts how his father, Agamemnon's uncle, was fed his own boiled children. Even so, the sense of a curse is present earlier. When the chorus says that the act of evil breeds others to follow, young sins in its own likeness, they allude to the fate of Agamemnon's family, whose suffering passes from generation to generation. Although he is the title character, Agamemnon appears only briefly. His arrival allows Clytemnestra and the chorus to hint that all may not be well in Argos. The chorus urges him to inquire among the citizens to learn who has been just and who reckless. The queen explains that the city's dangers compelled her to send Orestes away for his safety. In truth, she sent him away to facilitate her involvement with Aegisthus. During his short time on stage, Agamemnon makes little heroic impression. The play belongs to Clytemnestra, his intelligent, daring, and formidable wife. Although he is a great warrior, the story of Iphigenia's death has already turned the audience against him. His arrogant account of victory at Troy reinforces this view, as does his dismissive treatment of Clytemnestra. He parades Cassandra before the queen, and his reply to Clytemnestra's heartfelt welcome seems brusque and disrespectful. Yet it is important to consider that Agamemnon's harsh attitude may stem from rumors of her infidelity. Agamemnon rebukes his wife for laying the carpet before him, insisting that walking upon it would display unseemly pride and provoke the wrath of the gods. Such state becomes the gods, he tells her, and none beside. I am a mortal, a man. I cannot trample upon these tinted splendors without fear thrown in my path. Clytemnestra goads him, accusing him of fear and pointing out that had Priam, the king of Troy, won the war, he would have walked on purple. At last, Agamemnon consents and enters the palace on the carpet, demanding that proper care be given to Cassandra, the Trojan princess he has taken as his slave and concubine. Clytemnestra comments that the purple dye of the carpet comes from the sea, ever of itself renewed, and follows him inside, expressing her joy at having him home again. Outside the palace, the chorus senses a sudden foreboding despite Agamemnon's homecoming and the seeming restoration of order to Argos. They cannot articulate their fears. "I murmur deep in darkness, sore at heart. My hope is gone now," they lament. Clytemnestra reappears and orders Cassandra to join in the sacrifices of thanksgiving, telling her she should not be too unhappy, as she will have kind masters. Cassandra offers no reply, and the chorus echoes the queen's orders. When the girl remains silent, they suggest she may not understand the language, but Clytemnestra declares that she is lost in the passion of her own wild thoughts, adding that she will waste no more time on her. The queen retires, leaving Cassandra alone with the chorus, who express pity for her and gently tell her to take up the burden that will be hers. Agamemnon shows prudence in initially resisting the carpet, but his weakness is revealed in Clytemnestra's ability to goad him into an act of hubris simply by saying, "If Priam had one as you have, what would he have done?" As he walks on the cloth, he prays that no god's eyes of hatred strike me from afar, yet this plea only foreshadows his fate, which will be initiated not from afar but from the one closest to him. Agamemnon's request for kind treatment of Cassandra contrasts sharply with his cold attitude toward his wife. While it was customary in Greece for a conquering king to take captives as concubines, the audience senses that Cassandra's presence is deeply disrespectful to Clytemnestra, especially since she had claimed during his absence, "With no man else have I known delight." This claim is false. Clytemnestra does have a lover, making any sympathy she earns complicated. This paradox forms a central question of the play. Should the audience support Agamemnon's wife as a wronged woman seeking revenge, or see her as a murdering adulteress? After the king enters, the chorus delivers another ominous speech. Despite Argos' apparent joy and restored order, still the spirit sings, drawing deep. Hope is gone utterly, the sweet strength is far away. Their sombre tone signals Agamemnon's impending doom, though the murder is delayed as Clytemnestra returns to summon Cassandra into the palace. Despite their conflicting interests, the queen speaks kindly to the captive girl. "From us, you shall have all you have the right to ask." As Cassandra's prophetic gift will later reveal, she is being invited to her death, though the audience remains unaware of her fate. Up to this point, no concrete evidence exists of the disaster that will strike the city. The watchmen and the chorus have expressed grim uneasiness, but only Cassandra will reveal the full truth of their foreboding. Cassandra speaks for the first time, crying out to Apollo. She asks why he torments her and to which city he has brought her. The chorus tells her she is in the house of the Atridae, the home of Agamemnon's family. She calls it a house that God hates, the shambles for men's butchery, the dripping floor, recalling past crimes committed there and prophesying vaguely about future acts of violence. The chorus does not understand her message, but she continues to declare that destruction will fall upon the house, and laments the fate that destroyed Troy and brought her here. The chorus urges her to tell her story. Cassandra explains that Apollo fell in love with her and granted her the gift of prophecy. She promised to bear him a child, but when she broke her word, he punished her so that no one would heed her warnings. She then prophesies that she and Agamemnon will die at the hands of a woman lioness, who goes to bed with the wolf. Eventually, a son will arise to kill the murderess and avenge his father's death. After delivering this prophecy, Cassandra declares herself resigned to die. Everyone else in her native city has perished, and it is her time to join them. The chorus praises her bravery, even as they fail to comprehend her prophecy, and she moves toward the palace. Once there, she recoils, crying that the room within reeks with blood like a slaughterhouse. Steeling herself, she enters, making a final prayer to Apollo that her son will come to avenge both her own death and Agamemnon's. Cassandra's fate, as a prophetess whom no one believes, makes her a figure of profound pity. She perceives what the chorus and the people of Argos cannot, yet her warnings fall on deaf ears. She recognizes the ancestral curse on the house, brought by Agamemnon's father when he roasted his brother's children and served them for dinner, and understands that there is one that plots vengeance for this, in the form of Aegisthus. Even the details of Agamemnon's impending murder are clear to her. Caught in the folded web's entanglement, she pinions him, and with the black horn strikes. And he crumples in the watered bath. She also prophesies the coming of Orestes, which will unfold in the next play of the trilogy, the libation bearers. In ancient Greece, prophets received their foresight from Apollo, as Cassandra does. Throughout her speech, she curses Apollo, or Loxias, for bringing suffering into her life. Before facing death, she breaks her prophet's staff and tears off her garland, exclaiming, "Out, down, break, damn you! This for all you have done to me." Cassandra's tragic experience is typical of Greek prophecy, in which foresight is often more a curse than a blessing. Like Tiresias in Oedipus Rex, who refuses to share his visions since the future cannot be changed, Cassandra understands that a prophet must submit to the fate she perceives. "I will go through with it, I too will take my fate," she declares. Her knowledge that Agamemnon, the destroyer of Troy, will die for his crimes eases her passage, as does her understanding and acceptance of her role. The time for lamentation is over, and she welcomes death, moving toward Clytemnestra's sword. Her final line embodies the tragedy of a prophet's life. She hopes that "I may close these eyes and rest." To see with God-gifted eyes is no blessing if they behold only suffering and loss. Cassandra realizes that it is far better for her eyes to be closed forever. Once Cassandra has departed, the chorus fears for Agamemnon's safety. Suddenly, the king's voice is heard from within, crying out in agony that he is mortally wounded. Another scream follows, then silence. The chorus debates what action to take. Some urge sending messengers to rally the citizens of Argos, while others insist they should enter immediately and confront the murderers, with the blood still running from their blades. The doors fly open, revealing Clytemnestra standing triumphantly over the bodies of Agamemnon and Cassandra. Without shame, the queen recounts how she killed Agamemnon with an axe, trapping him in his bath with heavy robes. She tells the chorus that he was evil and deserved to die. They declare that she will be driven from Argos and shunned for her crime. She rebukes them, pointing out their hypocrisy, noting that none of them protested when Agamemnon sacrificed her innocent daughter, Iphigenia. The murder of her husband, she insists, is justified, an act of vengeance. Thus Agamemnon lies dead alongside Cassandra, who shared his bed. The chorus laments the killings, blaming Agamemnon's death on Helen of Troy. They wonder who will mourn him, since his supposed closest relation has killed him. Clytemnestra tells them that Iphigenia, his child, will greet him next. The chorus bemoans the stain left on the family and city by the ancestral curse, but the queen insists that her act has ended the cycle of vengeance and violence. This moment marks Clytemnestra's triumph. Often called Aeschylus' greatest character, she chastises the chorus with inner strength and resolve, the same resolve that drove her to murder. Unlike Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth, who loses her nerve and mind after a series of killings, Clytemnestra remains grim and determined throughout, showing no remorse because, in her view, the act is justified. Some critics argue that the audience should admire Clytemnestra's actions rather than condemn them. Aeschylus emphasizes Agamemnon's abhorrent sacrifice of Iphigenia early in the play, and Clytemnestra recalls it immediately after the murder. "With the sword he struck, with the sword he paid for his own act," she says. Remorse, critics note, will never touch her. It is important to remember that Aeschylus constructed a three-part story, with Agamemnon as only the first installment. In this play, Clytemnestra appears as a heroine, and her act is framed nobly, vengeance for the death of her daughter. Yet within the trilogy, her crime must eventually be avenged by her son Orestes in the libation bearers. As the play ends, the darker aspects of Clytemnestra's crime emerge. Her lover, Aegisthus, appears, and she begins her transformation from vengeful mother to adulterous murderess, a role she will fully assume in the next play. The audience sees foreshadowing of her doom when she boasts of ending the ancestral curse, I swept from these halls the murder, the sin, and the fury." This arrogant declaration marks her with the same deadly hubris that brought her husband to ruin. Aegisthus, Clytemnestra's lover, appears for the first time, accompanied by his bodyguards. He is Agamemnon's cousin, and as he rejoices over the murder, the history of the ancestral curse that led to the king's death is revealed. Aegisthus' father, Thyestes, had tried unsuccessfully to seize the crown from Agamemnon's father, Atreus, and was exiled from Argos. Eventually, Thyestes returned and begged for mercy. Atreus pretended to welcome him, then boiled 2 of Thyestes' sons and served them to his brother, who ate his own children unknowingly. Since that horrific day, Thyestes and his son had lived in exile, and only now has the crime against Aegisthus' family been avenged. The chorus taunts Aegisthus, mocking him for allowing a woman to commit the murder, and warning that he will be executed for his role. "How shall you be lord of the men of Argos, you who planned the murder yet could not dare to act it out?" they ask. Aegisthus defends himself, claiming that his exile kept him from approaching Agamemnon to kill him. He asserts that his henchmen and control of the treasury will allow him to govern the city, and threatens to have the chorus killed. As the threats are exchanged, Clytemnestra acts as a peacemaker, telling the chorus that she and Aegisthus could not have acted otherwise, and that peace must now reign in Argos under her rule. The defeated chorus accepts their authority, but declares that when Orestes returns, he will avenge his father's murder. Aegisthus and Clytemnestra dismiss these warnings as empty threats and assume control of the state. In Aeschylus' time, many versions of the story circulated. In some, Aegisthus himself kills the king. Here, however, Aeschylus elevates the heroine, portraying Aegisthus as a strutting fool, a poor match for his bold partner. He has lurked in the shadows while Clytemnestra carried out the murderous act, and now emerges only to bluster and threaten the chorus. The terrible story of his family and his brother's fate may evoke some sympathy, but after years in exile, it seems he has learned only how to bully others into submission. Clytemnestra herself is diminished by her connection to him, and their affair serves to shift the audience's sympathy toward her son Orestes in the next play. Some critics have questioned why Clytemnestra's plot succeeded, why the chorus and the people of Argos submit to a braggart and a husband-murderer with his group of thugs. The chorus repeatedly threatens to punish the adulterous couple, yet takes no action. Their weakness can be attributed in part to Clytemnestra's commanding personality, which allows her to mediate between her lover and the chorus. The audience must also accept the existence of prior discontent with Agamemnon's rule, providing a base of support for his replacements. Argos and the chorus cannot resist the couple. They must wait for Orestes to avenge his father and restore order. The final lines of the play foreshadow his homecoming in the next part of the trilogy. Aeschylus was born in Eleusis, a small town near Athens, in the mid-6th century BCE. He is known as the father of tragedy, having created the dramatic form that defined Athens's cultural high point. Tradition holds that Aeschylus worked in his father's vineyard until he was inspired in a dream by Dionysus, the god of theatre, to write tragedies. He was the first of the great Greek tragedians, preceding both Sophocles and Euripides, and is credited with inventing tragic drama. Before Aeschylus, plays were simpler, usually consisting of a single actor with a chorus providing commentary. Aeschylus introduced a second actor, sometimes more, which expanded the range of dramatic possibilities. Alongside Sophocles and Euripides, he became one of the most important literary figures in the Western tradition. He transformed a religious festival mourning the sufferings of Dionysus into a literary form with social and political significance, leaving a lasting influence on writers from Ovid to Shakespeare, Shelley, and Goethe. Like all male Athenian citizens, Aeschylus was a soldier as well as a playwright. He fought at the Battle of Marathon against the Persians in 490 BCE, and again at Salamis and Plataea in 480 BCE. Athens was part of a coalition of small Greek states resisting the enormous Persian army led by King Xerxes. According to Herodotus, the Greeks were outnumbered and outfinanced, but their commitment to democracy and personal freedom allowed them to fight with extraordinary courage, unlike the Persian soldiers, who had no personal stake in the conflict. The translator and editor Robert Fagles notes that the Greek victory in 479 BCE was celebrated as the triumph of right over might, courage over fear, freedom over servitude, moderation over arrogance. This victory ushered in a period of cultural flourishing, establishing these values as the foundation of Athens and fostering a sense of religious, political, and personal harmony following the chaos of earlier wars. In this context, at the age of 67 and after producing at least 70 plays, Aeschylus wrote his masterpiece, the trilogy the Oresteia, composed of the tragedies Agamemnon, the Libation Bearers, and the Eumenides. Having led the defense of Greece against the Persians, Athens now took a position of leadership among its neighbors and began defining itself as an empire. The Oresteia can be seen as a new charter myth for Athens, chronicling the shift from personal vengeance, which perpetuated cycles of violence, to the rule of law, where the state assumed responsibility for justice. Aeschylus died around 456 BCE while visiting Gela in Sicily. His gravestone commemorates his participation in the Battle of Marathon, though it does not mention his playwriting, reflecting the Greek emphasis on military achievement. Only 7 of his plays have survived, though fragments of others continue to be discovered. Agamemnon depicts the assassination of the king by his wife, Clytemnestra, and her lover, Aegisthus. The Libation Bearers continues the story with the return of Agamemnon's son, Orestes, who kills his mother to avenge his father. In the Eumenides, Orestes is pursued by the Furies for matricide and ultimately finds refuge in Athens, where Athena relieves him of their persecution. The events of Agamemnon would have been familiar to an Athenian audience. The king returns from his victory at Troy, which has been besieged for 10 years by Greek armies seeking to recover Helen, the wife of Agamemnon's brother, who was taken by the treacherous Trojan prince, Paris. The tragedies of the play stem from crimes committed by Agamemnon's family. His father, Aeschylus, boiled the children of his brother, Thyestes, and served them to him. Aegisthus, Thyestes' surviving son and Clytemnestra's lover, seeks revenge. Agamemnon also sacrificed his daughter, Iphigenia, to ensure favorable winds to sail to Troy, and Clytemnestra murders him in revenge for her child's death. The weight of family history and ancestral curse is a central theme of the play and the entire trilogy, showing that the house of Aeschylus cannot escape the cycle of bloodshed caused by its past.